Special thanks to Horizon Therapeutics for sponsoring today's Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast. Working tirelessly to research, develop, and bring forward medicines for people living with rare and rheumatic diseases. Discover more about Horizon Therapeutics' mission at horizontherapeutics.com.
Everything that I believed regarding my son was what I observed because I knew him better than anybody else. I knew him better. And that's something that parents really need to understand. They have all these experts that trot out there and start giving you opinions and whatnot. Don't ever forget, you're the person that knows your child better than anybody else. Don't ever forget that.
That's our guest this week, Louis Geigerman, founder of the National ARD IEP Advocates, who counsel and represent parents of kids with special needs in schools throughout Texas. Louis had a son, Ben, who had Aspergers and tragically died shortly after graduating cum laude from Texas State University. We'll hear the Geigerman family story and more on this Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast. Say hello to David Hirsch.
Hi, and thanks for listening to the Dad to Dad podcast, Fathers Mentoring Fathers of Children with Special Needs, presented by the Special Fathers Network.
The Special Fathers Network is a dad-to-dad mentoring program for fathers raising children with special needs. Through our personalized matching process, new fathers with special needs children connect with mentor fathers in a similar situation. It's a great way for dads to support dads. To find out more, go to 21stcenturydads.org.
And if you're a dad looking for help or would like to offer help, we'd be honored to have you join our closed Facebook group. Please go to facebook.com/groups and search Dad to Dad.
And now let's listen to this conversation between Louis Geigerman and David Hirsch.
I'm thrilled to be talking today with Louis Geigerman of Houston, Texas, who's the father of two and founder of the National ARD IEP Advocates, a nationally recognized firm of non-attorney advocates specializing in advocating for families of children with special needs in public schools across the state of Texas. Louis, thank you for taking the time to do a podcast interview for the Special Fathers Network.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You and your former wife, Joanne Must, were married for 19 years and are the proud parents of two, Kayla, 29, and older brother, Ben, who had Aspergers and tragically took his own life at age 22 in July 2011. Let's start with some background. Where did you grow up? Tell me something about your family.
Well, let's see. I grew up in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. I'm the youngest of three children, son of a doctor, and a mother who was an English teacher. So, kind of it.
Okay. I know that you mentioned in a previous conversation that your dad was an anesthesiologist, and there in Oklahoma City, and then did he move around or did the whole family move around?
We all moved around, but I should say pretty much he did. He moved, really most of the moving came about toward the end of his career. I mean, he was established in Oklahoma for a long time. And so really when he went into private practice, he was in Oklahoma City and he stayed there until I went to college. Something else that was interesting. He, back in the 70s when Nixon had the ping pong diplomacy and opened they had the opening to China, he became interested also in doing power of positive suggestion, hypnosis. He was actually experimenting with hypnosis as another way of dealing with pain management, which was something that was really kind of very innovative if you think about it in the 70s in the medical profession.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing. I'm sort of curious now, how would you describe your relationship with your dad?
It was kind of, it was okay. It was good. I mean, we had our ups and downs, like any type of relationship. I mean, he used to take me to, one thing he imparted to me was a love for fishing. And so we used to go fishing a lot together. Also, sports, going to baseball games and Oklahoma football games. I mean, he was like a major sports fan. But one thing he always said to me, and I didn't really realize it until later on in life, how important it was that you take time off and do something different than what you're doing every day. It's just so important to, to really have a vacation, but do something different because, life can be extremely stressful. And for his business, anesthesia is a very, 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 it can be very, very stressful. I mean, and he had a lot of days when he would be at be on call and go to OR, and, sometimes bad things happen to people, they pass away, and very, very stressful. But it's funny, when I got older, I really saw what he was talking about.
Yeah, well, sometimes you don't realize until we have the benefit of hindsight. And the phrase that comes to mind is, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect the dots when you're looking backwards. And that's a really important understanding. And another way to think about it is that you have to have balance in your life, right? If you just do one thing, right, the monotony of that, you just get bored, right? Each of us as human beings, and you can only do something for so long. It loses its appeal, no matter what that something is. So.
And the other thing that he said to me, and really, he made it really clear that in the medical profession, he was able to do things where he was able to give back to society. I mean, he did a lot of charity cases, a lot. And he felt that that was very, very important. And he says, back at that time, I was more, at the time I was employed in the securities business, which I think that's what you do. And not as much, I couldn't do as much. And he always said, I try to find something that you can give back. And it's funny, he never really, he died before he could see what I had been doing with my advocacy work. And I'm able to do just that, what he had always strived for, to make the world a better place. And so that's something I take with me.
Excellent. Well, in addition to that, were there any other takeaways or important lessons that you learned from your dad?
Well, always be ethical. I mean, that was something that was really important for him. And I did, I've led my life to be, ethics were just always straight there. Also, appreciate a good joke and be able to appreciate a good joke and appreciate a good glass of scotch. I don't want to make it like my dad was a big drinker. He wasn't, but appreciate a good glass of scotch, appreciate a good joke, and, try to give back. And basically, he wanted me to be a mensch, and that's what a mensch is, being a human being in Judaism, for those who don't know, and that's what I've tried to be.
Yeah, well, that's fabulous. It sounds like he was a good role model, and he was present. That's what I heard you say. And it sounds like he was very, not only career focused, doing something that was meaningful in the medical profession, but he had some outside interests, right? So there was a decent balance in his life as well.
Yeah.
My recollection was that you went to the Oklahoma University and then UNLV, and you got a degree in hotel administration.
That's right. And
I'm wondering, where did your career take you?
That's a good question. It went from here to here to here. I was in the restaurant business for a number of years, and I'm doing that for a few years, and then I don't know. Somebody had talked to me about doing investment, getting in the investment business. I was looking for another career change, and I did that. I got into it. My sister-in-law was in that, and she did a lot of work with schools and hospitals, and I got interested in it, and then I ran with it, and I was actually in the investment business for 20 years. So that's kind of a far cry from being, but you had a lot of business courses as part of your hotel administration. So, it really wasn't such a far deviation from it, to be honest. So I did that, and then that kind of took me. I got married, and we had a child, and then we had another child, and the first child ended up having challenges, And that necessitated me to really have to start understanding about, well, really how to access services, although initially I was more passive in how I was handling education from, with him in particular. For one thing, my former wife had her master's degree in library science, but I kind of let her kind of drive the ship for a while. And after a while, I kind of felt that he was floundering, and I decided I was going to take more control and be more of an active participant. And from that point, I started driving the ship, and because I wasn't happy with that, with how schools were working with my child. So then I went into that. I started doing advocacy at the same time I was doing securities. And at a certain point, I really started liking it. And I said to myself that when I made $1 more than I was making in the securities business, I was going to start doing that full time. That's what I did. That's what I've been doing ever since.
Well, I love the story. Thanks for sharing. And so I'm sort of curious to know, before Ben's diagnosis, did you or Joanne have any connection or experience to the special needs community?
Not at all.
And how did the diagnosis, the Asperger's diagnosis, come about?
Well, first of all, his reaction to stimuli were different. Okay. He didn't respond to sounds as normal kids would. He played differently. He also, he lined toys up, it looked strange, and then he'd go around in circles and saying gibberish, which was strange. Okay. So, and then school, he was in a preschool, and, they said, like, you might want to have a look and just have him evaluated. And so all of these things kind of came together. And so we got him assessed, and then we had the diagnosis, and it was like, hit you like right in the head, like a bolt of lightning goes right through you, It's like, whoa. It's like, okay, yeah, there's a problem, but somebody that's in PDD, NOS, pervasive developmental disorder, not otherwise specific, what in the hell is that?
How old would he have been then?
Well, we had him tested 2.5. It was near his 3rd birthday, somewhere close to his 3rd birthday.
Okay. Can you remember back then what fears or concerns you had?
Well, I can tell you one thing. For one thing, PDD-NOS has been a label that for years people were trying to figure out, what the hell is that? It just wasn't clear, and it's been a little clearer today. But of course, your question is what happens going forward? What's going to happen in the future for this job? But one thing we'd elicited some help from somebody, and at 3, a child can receive services from their public school, and so we had somebody actually come into the house that was from the district. And this boy, I'm not going to say the name or anything like that, but I will tell you, this person comes in. This person was a PhD psychologist, and she hadn't seen the kid for 5 seconds. She sits us down. We have a conversation with her to start off, to talk with her. And the first thing out of her mouth, without even looking or really spending any time with him to really understand who he was, this person comes in and says, well, you need to be prepared that he will be institutionalized for the rest of his life.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Wow is correct. I mean, this is without even assessing him or doing nothing. This is the first thing. So imagine, I mean, that's a gut punch, okay, to you for sure. Now, my former wife was crying from this, okay. I responded differently, and that was, "Oh, really? Oh, really? You blank? I'm gonna show you." And that was kind of my kick in the butt, like, okay, well, let's just see what we can do about that. And that made me just absolutely do everything I could to basically show her that, so how dare you come up with that? I mean, my former wife was like, "Oh my God, it's over." And I'm saying, it's not over. This is just starting.
Yeah, well, I can paraphrase what you said, Louis. First of all, bad bedside manner, no real evaluation to make some type of, definitive projection like that. And you took it as a challenge, right? That's what I heard you.
I did. I did.
Yeah.
I did. That's exactly what I did. And I was hell bent. I won't accept that. But how dare somebody do that to somebody? I mean, just okay. So fears. Well, that started with a few fears.
Well, thanks for your authenticity. Was there any advice you got early on, not from this well-educated psychologist, but as you progressed from there, was there any advice that you got that you can look back on and say, that really helped or that made a difference?
Well, early on, not really. Okay, because really we were doing our own thing pretty much, and just doing it based on what we felt was best. And I'll be honest with you, not that I recollect. I mean, there were some ideas that somebody had helped me with regarding advocacy, but not really. Everything that I believed regarding my son was what I observed, because I knew him better than anybody else. I knew him better. And that's something that parents really need to understand. They have all these experts that trot out there and start giving you opinions and whatnot. Don't ever forget, you're the person that knows your child better than anybody else. Don't ever forget that. Now, you can learn things. You can learn on how to manage behavior. You can learn how to help in speech. But make no mistake, you know your child better than anybody else, and don't let anybody ever tell you anything different.
Yeah, that's an important takeaway. Thanks for sharing. And, you don't maybe have that understanding right away, certainly as a young parent. But as time goes by, you realize that these are people just doing a job, right, as best they can based on what they're observing. And it's a well-informed or well-intended opinion that people express. But at a core level, like you said, you know your child better than anybody else, and you have to trust your gut, right? That if something doesn't square, you need to, keep digging or keep looking for more information. So thanks for sharing. So not to focus on the negative, but I'm wondering what some of the bigger challenges were that you encountered during Ben's life raising a child with Asperger's.
Of course, Asperger's doesn't exist anymore, okay? So it's autism spectrum disorder. His lack of social skills. I mean, really, his social isolation was a huge problem for him. He went through, imagine yourself going through life until you get to college and not having any friends, not having people you can share stuff with, just basically coming home, doing your thing, being a voracious reader, watching shows, whatever, very brilliant individual, but not having any friends to share. He didn't have that. It was a huge, and there are so many families that experience that with kids in the spectrum. I'll have families tell me when I work with them, they'll say to me, Well, I have a high functioning kid. I have a high functioning kid in the spectrum. And he doesn't need that many problems. I said, let me guess, he's got social skills problems. He said, well, yeah. Well, let me tell you something. You have a bigger challenge with that than you do with a child that is lower functioning, because they know they're different. They want to have interaction with other kids, and they just can't put it together. And it wears on them, and it depresses them. And it's something that you have to really work at. At the end of the day, that's going to be the biggest limiting issue. And also, the other problem was, due to some of his challenge, and he had motor planning challenges, he couldn't do the typical jobs that we had when we were 16, 17 years old. He couldn't work at McDonald's. It would have been difficult in a retail store for him to do stuff. So he wasn't able to create a portfolio of jobs to do. We didn't have paper routes. Back when I was a kid, we had paper routes, which is Temple Grandin talks about that. Well, that's another way for a kid to have a job. But I mean, he didn't have that ability to experience. Then he gets a internship, and from what he told me, his internship at this, I think this was a pension company. And this guy asked him, he said, do you have a girlfriend? I mean, what the hell has that got to do with anything? And and then he let him go in 2 weeks. And it's like he never had a positive work experience. He didn't have anybody that would take a chance on him. So I think employment, social skills, most definitely. And social isolation was a huge, huge thing for him.
So was he actually being treated for depression or not?
Well, no, not really. I mean, later on, he was being treated. Before, when he went to college, he started being treated for that. But it was, but when he went to college, he had made friends. He actually found a group of friends that were terrific, that were, these kids were just amazing human beings, and loved him, and he hung with them, and they were inseparable. So it was just amazing.
Well, it sounds like he made a lot of progress from high school to college as far as his social skills and fitting in.
He did.
And he was a great student from what I remember you telling me as well. So
he was.
So it's been a decade since Ben left or passed away.
Yeah. Yeah. Next month it'll be a year, 10 years. Yeah.
Does it look different now, 10 years later, than it did then, or not?
Well, the intense emotions and the intense pain is different. I mean, the intensity is definitely different. Does it look different? I mean, it's always some, I don't think about it constantly. Back then I was thinking about it constantly, but there are things that will be reminding me of situations, and then things like this, talking about it, it opens up some stuff, but it is what it is, David. It's I'm open about it, and it's what people say is that, and this is the way I originally described it, and I found other people say it. It's a hole in your heart that's always there. It might get smaller, but it's always there. Be a part of me and be always a part of my experience forever. But, it's taught me a lot of lessons, I'll tell you. I think I'm a better person, I hope. That's all I'm trying to be, is a better person now.
Yeah, well, you'd like to think that his short life had a purpose, and some of the things that you've been doing as a result are a part of his legacy. And I know that one of the things that you created is the Benjamin J. Geigerman Lecture Series at University of Texas. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
I explained the experience that nobody wanted to give him a chance with employment. Okay, that's a big problem. We think about unemployment rates. If we have a 10% employment rate, people are saying, oh God, it's terrible. 10%, whoa, that's terrible. We're in bad straits, right? When you're thinking about people on the spectrum, how about an 80% unemployment rate? How would that go in society? 80% unemployment rate. Okay. The problem is that we have brilliant people with incredible skills that are being untapped and unrecognized by society. And too often jobs, when you think of vocational jobs, vocational placements, mostly, they try to figure out, oh, well, we'll groom somebody to be a sacker at Safeway. I mean, that's no. I mean, I'm talking white collar, executive level jobs, and they can do amazing things. And so the lecture series is profiling companies that are doing that. We're talking about individuals in the spectrum that are working for these companies and have talked about their journey and how it's worked for them. What it's there is to, number one, is to raise consciousness to corporations that you need to be hiring these individuals. You need to look at them. They may be diamonds in the rough, but you need to change the hiring practices, because you're going to end up at the end of the day you're going to have much better employees, a lot less turnover, and it'll improve your bottom line. And at the same time, I want to give hope to individuals that there is a pathway. There is a way, because so often your job is so much a part of your personal dignity. If you can't make a living wage, if you can't support yourself, you're on the government dole, you don't feel good about yourself. And that's what the mission is.
Yeah, well, I love it. And I'm wondering if companies like SAP and Walgreens are the type of companies you're talking about, or if there's some others.
They are. Actually, SAP has been a leader, and they do an autism at work program. Actually, we really want to call it more neurodiversity in the workplace, as opposed to saying, target a particular group. But basically, autism at work showcases companies that are doing just that in ways that we can find way companies can find a way to hire more individuals. I'm going to say a plug, sorry, but if somebody wants to make a contribution to the Benjamin J. Geigerman Lecture Series, bring it on. That helps us, because what we want to do is we want to be able to do job fairs for these individuals and really make it where it's not an issue anymore. But
I know that there were some organizations that you'd mentioned in a prior conversation, and I'm wondering if you can spend a few minutes before we talk about the National ARD IEP Advocates organization. One of them is the Council of Parent Attorneys and Advocates, COPAA. What is that organization? Who do they serve?
Well, the Council of Parents, Attorneys, and Advocates is the largest national organization of parent-side attorneys, parent-side advocates, and parents that come together for information to be able to advocate for their child with the public schools, okay, in a nutshell. Right now, we have a little over 2,600 members. I am a charter member of that organization. And, in 2020, they named me the outstanding advocate of the organization for my work that I had done. And that meant so much. It's very humbling when your peers do that. And so it's if you have a child in special ed or even 504, I am telling you need to join the organization. It's copp.org and it's copaa.org. But at national conference every March in different places. I think next year it's in Boston. please come, please join. These are kindred spirits, and they're wonderful. Also, there's other organizations that you join, the National Alliance of Mentally Ill. They have chapters all over the country. They do conferences, and it's important because you can network with other individuals to find clinicians that can help, and that can help your situation. The American Foundation for Suicide Prevention is another organization which does just that, to prevent suicide, and there's been a rash of them. I remember after Ben died, I went the first year there, and I think I shared this with you the other day when we were talking. We went right after he died. They have what they call an out of darkness walk. Well, suicide has got this taboo that nobody wants to talk about it, and the idea is to come out of the darkness and talk about it and try to raise consciousness. Geez, that first year I went, there was maybe, I don't know, a couple of hundred people that were there. Myself and my former wife and I attended. Today there are thousands and thousands of people that come to this, and they have teams of individuals that come that were friends of these individuals. And one of the most stark reminders to that was they have a thing along the sidewalk where they have all the shoes of individuals that are no longer walk the earth. That's what they did at the Holocaust Museum in Washington. But it's you see those shoes, you just takes your breath away and makes it really personal. But if you know somebody that's hurting, if you know somebody that needs some help, AFSP is there. They also they do talks, and of course it's certainly worthy. All of these organizations are worthy of your making a contribution for, because COVID has created even more of a problem. So many people have been depressed because they've been socially isolated, and suicide has been an even bigger problem as a result.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing. It's the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, AFSP.org. And I love the visual image that you were relating about the out of darkness walk, right? Shedding light on, a problem. That visual image of the shoes, these piles of shoes, right? The scale, the impact of the issue on humanity is what I heard you saying. Let us switch gears and talk about the organization that you helped start, which is this National ARD IEP Advocates. What motivated you to do this, and how has it transpired over the last 20 years?
That's interesting. Actually, I've been doing it now 26 years. So it's funny, a friend of mine from my hometown who moved here, from Oklahoma City, moved here, and she dealt with deaf ed education, and she knew what I was doing, and I had taken on I helping Ben, and she said, something, you ought to consider being an advocate. And at that time I had no idea what that was. And then that's all she had to do, was just give me the idea, and then I ran with it. And so in 1995 I took on my first client, and I started doing it, and I found out I was actually pretty good at it, and then I started taking more clients, and over time I became more and more, and I will take them to soup to nuts. A lot of parents, once they start working with me, they get a different response, and they know that their school is being held to the feet to the fire. I'll represent family. If it comes to a head, I can also file for administrative due process against districts. I file complaints, whatever. But the end of the day, what I'm doing is trying to level the playing field for children and empower parents, and that's what I do. And I have 9 other associates that are with us with varying backgrounds. from people that are dyslexia specialists to former special ed directors. So we have a cadre of individuals that are really experienced and really understand and are very child-centered.
Yeah, well, I love the work that you do. I'm wondering, under the banner of advice, if there's any advice that you might be able to share beyond the scope of the conversation, or maybe something you want to emphasize to the parents, the dads in particular, that might be listening.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, a lot of people, parents, dads are, a lot of, working. Most of the time, they're the working person in a family. But, you try to be as close as you can to your kids to understand where they are. But your presence, as I said before, the most important thing is be an active participant. But don't accept everything that the school tells you as being the truth. I'm not saying schools lie. However, as a general rule, I find that schools have a different agenda. Okay? The agenda for the parents is for the child to be tax-paying citizens and to be what they want to be. And schools are really more about, let's get them out of the system and off the payroll. I mean, make them not a liability to us. So if you keep that mindset, I think that's the most important thing.
Excellent.
There's one more thing. I just thought of it. A parent that I helped early on in my career said something to me. I mean, I said something to him from my experience. And one thing I said about it was, I said, okay, you have a child in the spectrum. You need to think about things in this way. You need to think about, while God forbid this happens, but you need to think about your child has cancer. Okay? Well, why cancer? If your child had cancer, what would you do? You would find the finest doctors in the world that you could to relieve that problem. You would go to the end of the world to do that. I said, think of it in that term, that you've got a serious medical issue and that you need to do everything you can to help, treat that. And that he told me that was the single best recommendation I ever said, because that put him in a different mode in how to provide services and assistance for his kid.
Yeah, well, what I heard you say is you need to light a fire, right? You need to get somebody's attention. And unfortunately, when you hear a cancer diagnosis, it's usually a big wake-up call, right, for people. And I think that what I hear you saying, Louis, is that you need to create a sense of urgency. Don't be passive. Don't take the let's wait and see attitude. Sometimes things get better before they get worse mentality. And if you were to err on the side of engaging. Be intentional.
Agreed. That's exactly it. Well said.
So let's give a special shout out to our mutual friend, Frederick Jefferson, there in Houston with the Man-to-Man program for helping connect us.
Thanks for putting us together, for sure, man.
Is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up?
No, I really admire you for this project, and it's something that's needed. And I hope that we can inspire other dads to really be leaders and to be more connected to their child's life, because it's so important.
If somebody wants to learn more about the National ARD IEP Advocates or contact you, how would they go about doing that?
Email me at National ARD Advocates. That's National ARD Advocates with an S at gmail.com. And if you can't remember that, just go to NARDA, NARDA.org. Go to my website. It's got my email. It's got a whole bunch of stuff on there. And it's I have stuff on me. Easiest thing to do is remember NARDA.org.
Is there anything else? I mean, you can have more than one thing under the anything else you want to say before we wrap up.
Yeah, I do a weekly radio show called the Special Ed Section 504 Radio Hour on cypressradio.org, cypressradio.org. It's on every Saturday from 10 to 11 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. to 11 Chicago time. And, also at cypressradio.org, there's some archives up there We do incredible interviews from people like Temple Grandin and Dr. Ross Green, and others. You get incredible information that we have provided I'm now starting my 7th year of the show. And so we've had just a phenomenal guest, and it's something that a parent can get really good information from. So check it out. cypressradio.org, the Special Ed Section 504 Radio Hour.
Excellent. We'll be sure to include that in the show notes as well. Louis, thank you for taking the time and many insights. As a reminder, Louis is just one of the dads who's part of the Special Fathers Network, a mentoring program for fathers raising a child with special needs. If you'd like to be a mentor father or are seeking advice from a mentor father with a similar situation to your own, please go to 21stcenturydads.org. Thank you for listening to the latest episode of the Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. As you probably know, the 21st Century Dads Foundation is a 501c3 not-for-profit organization, which means we need your help to keep our content free to all concerned. Would you please consider making a tax-deductible contribution? I would really appreciate your support. Louis, thanks again.
Adios, my pleasure.
And thank you for listening to the Dad to Dad podcast, presented by the Special Fathers Network. The Special Fathers Network is a dad-to-dad mentoring program for fathers raising children with special needs. Through our personalized matching process, new fathers with special needs children connect with mentor fathers in a similar situation. It's a great way for fathers to support fathers. Go to 21stcenturydads.org.
And if you're a dad looking for help or would like to offer help, we would be honored to have you join our closed Facebook group. Please go to facebook.com/groups and search Dad to Dad. Also, please be sure to register for the Special Fathers Network bi-weekly Zoom calls held on the first and third Tuesdays of every month. Lastly, we're always looking to share interesting stories. If you'd like to share your story or know of a compelling story, please send an email to david@21stcenturydads.org.
The Dad to Dad podcast was produced by Couch Audio for the Special Fathers Network. Thanks again to Horizon Therapeutics, who believe that science and compassion must work together to transform lives. That's why they work tirelessly to research, develop, and bring forward medicines for people living with rare and rheumatic diseases. Discover more about Horizon Therapeutics at horizontherapeutics.com.